Gotta give them time. Good morning, everyone, and good evening to our online guests in Asia. So this is the conference, the extension of we started the conference yesterday. This is the 10th anniversary of the Boston Global Forum, and I think this is our 30-plus conference on important issues. This morning's conference is going to be a bit different than previous ones. What we're going to do is to acknowledge and reflect on the legacy of two of Asia's greatest leaders of the past half century, Japan's Shinzo Abe and Vietnam's Kiet. And we're going to start with words from our CEO of the Boston Global Forum, Tuan. We'll talk about the Shinzo Abe Initiative. And then Tuan's remarks, right after that, we'll hear from Nobi Mita and Queen Nan on the same subject. Tuan.
I'm highly appreciate you came here today morning in very early and very special time, prepare for Thanksgiving, that you are dedicated hard to Boston Global Forum, to Shinzo Abe, to volunteer our initiative for peace and security. You came here. Thank you so much from my bottom heart, and also thank for your contribution for 10 years Boston Global Forum. And first, I would like to introduce about Shinzo Abe Initiative for Peace and Security. Shinzo Abe is a great fan of Boston Global Forum, and he is the first leader in the world that Boston Global Forum award him World Leader for Peace and Security Award 2015 at Harvard also. And he dedicated to contribute for Boston Global Forum for peace and security very much for last 10 years. And he support for Boston Global Forum in Japan. And we can see there are a lot of leaders and distinguished thinkers of Japan contribute for Boston Global Forum, and today sit here to think to make Shinzo Abe alive with us forever, from his contribution, dedication for peace and security, and with his support for Boston Global Forum in G7 Summit 2016 in Japan. We have BGF G7 Summit report and initiative, and a lot of things, and we are very shocked. We have shocked to hear Shinzo Abe pass away. At that time, leaders of Boston Global Forum, we immediately discussed and proposed and established Shinzo Abe Initiative for peace and security, to make Shinzo Abe ally with us forever and ever to contribute for peace and security in the world. We get support and help from many leaders in the world for this initiative. Special our dear friends from Japan. Today we are here in this room and also in Tokyo side and on many sides. And peace and security is very important for the world today. And that is the key value and mission of Boston Global Forum for a long time, for 10 years ago. And so far continue more many years ahead. And we are very honored and we commit to do very much for Shinzo Abe Initiative for Peace and Security. Today, Governor Michael Dukakis have big issue in health, so he cannot come here. From yesterday, he only can call or phone, but he also dedicated think from his heart to Shinzo Abe. And so by that way, we are introduce Shinzo Abe Initiative for Peace and Security. And thanks for our dear friend from Japan. Thanks for leaders in the world to support and accompany with Boston Global Forum in Shinzo Abe Initiative for Peace and Security. And now we will have 1 minute to think about Shinzo Abe. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to invite Nobimita, representative of Boston Global Forum in Japan, to introduce from Japan side. Thank you.
Welcome. Congratulations of Boston Global Forum 10th anniversary. Good morning, Boston. Good evening, Tokyo. I am honored to receive such an honor. I'm Nobuemita, representative of Boston Global Forum Japan. I would like to express my appreciation to Creative Abe Initiative. Today, I'm very happy to have such distinguished intellectuals, wonderful intellectuals gathered here today. Particularly those who worked with Prime Minister Abe personally. They contributed greatly, supporting the Abe administration. At the administration and Japan policy. I think Abe's greatest legacy is the formation of the free and open Indo-Pacific, which has united democratic nations. Abe will be pleased to know that his initiative will contribute peace and security for Japan and the world. I would like to introduce Ambassador Ichiro Fujisaki, former Japanese ambassador to the USA, and the president of Nakasone Peace Institute. He will be a moderator today. And Judge Shunji Yanai, he is a judge from the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, the former Japanese ambassador to the USA. Mr. Yasuhide Nakayama, former State Minister of Defense and former State Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Bonji Ohara, Senior Fellow from Tasakawa Peace Foundation. And okay, please go ahead. Thank you very much. We will have, from now, we will have discussions. Theme is Japan's role in the world, peace and security. Moderator, Ambassador Ichiro Fujisaki.
Thank you, Mita-san. As Mita-san has just said, all of us here have known Prime Minister Abe for many years and have worked with him. Today, three of us would like to speak from different angles. First, Ambassador Yanai will talk from the point of security legislation, and what Abe-san did for security of Japan and Indo-Pacific, as mentioned by Mita-san. I will pass on to Yanai-san and then next to Ohara-san. So, Ambassador Yanai, can you please
Thank you, Ambassador Fujisaki. Good morning and good evening, everyone. Mita-san, thank you very much for your kind introduction. I had known Mr. Shinzo Abe since before he became a politician. In the 1980s, he was he was secretary to his father, who served as Prime Minister in those days. And when I was in Washington, D.C., Shinzo-san came, but in that was in 2001. He accompanied the then Prime Minister, Mr. Koizumi. The Shinzo-san was deputy cabinet minister in those days. I have served as a diplomat under many or countless prime ministers of Japan. But in my view, Shinzo Abe was one of the few real statesmen of Japan. He made a lot of contributions, not only to Japan, but also to the international community. And as far as Japan is concerned, he made a lot of reforms and contributions in the field of economics, education, and many other fields. But I would like to focus on his legacy in the field of peace and security. In 2007, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe established the advisory panel on reconstruction of the legal basis for security. This is a long name, so let me refer to this as the advisory panel hereinafter. This advisory panel issued two reports, one in 2008 and another in 2014. As you know, for many years, for for perhaps nearly 70 years, the Japanese government, uh, uh, 70 years after the promulgation of the Japanese constitution, the government of Japan held the interpretation that Article 9 of this constitution allowed Japan to exercise only the right of individual self-defense and prohibited the exercise of the right of collective self-defense and Japan's participation in collective security measures of the United Nations, especially entailing the use of force. Having carefully examined the letters of the Constitution, its overall context, including the background that led to the enactment of the Constitution, the basic national strategies, international relations, and international law, the advisory panel reached the conclusion that Article 9 allowed Japan to exercise not only the right of individual self-defense, but also the collective self-defense. And is also the panel interpreted that it allows Article 9 allows also Japan to participate in UN collective security measures, including those entailing the use of force. Accordingly, the advisory panel, in its two reports, recommended that the government change the interpretation of Article 9 along these lines and enact the peace and security legislation based on the revised interpretation. Shortly after the issue of the second report of the panel, the then Prime Minister Abe made a bill concerning peace and security laws, and presented it to the Diet. The new legislation included a lot of new approaches. For instance, first of all, the introduction of the collective self-defense. So, based on the recommendation of the advisory panel, Mr. Abe included the provision in the new legislation that Japan can exercise the right of collective self-defense, so that Japan can help the United States in case of emergency. And the new legislation included many other issues. For instance, provision concerning the rescue of Japanese nationals abroad using the self-defense forces, and also the amendment of the International Peace Cooperation Law, which is known as Peacekeeping Operation, PKO law of Japan, in order to facilitate the participation of self-defense forces in the UN peacekeeping operations. And the new legislation included also a new law concerning international peace support law. That is to facilitate the self-defense forces to provide logistic support to international peace operations. However, the most important feature was the introduction of the exercise of the collective self-defense. I think that without the very strong leadership of Mr. Shinzo Abe, such reforms could not have been made. So from that point of view also, I regret very much that he passed away suddenly in such a manner. He could have continued to contribute greatly to our nation and also to the international community. I stop here at this stage. Thank you very much.
Sorry, two Hamada-san. One is a defense minister and one is the economist. So I think the order is we start from the economist, Mr. Hamada Koichi. Message. Hamada Yasukazu, the message of defense minister. So Mita-san, would you please read it?
I read on behalf of active defense minister of Japan, Hamada Yasukazu. Message to Boston Global Forum. Excellency, I am Hamada Yasukazu, Defense Minister of Japan. I'm afraid I'm not able to attend this conference in person due to a schedule conflict. I'm very delighted to know that Boston Global Forum established the Shinzo Abe Initiative for Peace and Security to honor his legacy. The international community now faces severe security environment, such as North Korea's nuclear and missile development, China's unilateral change of the status quo, and its attempt to do so by force, the Russia's aggression against Ukraine. More than ever, it is important to promote a free and open Indo-Pacific, which Prime Minister Abe poured his heart into, and be Indo-Pacific, which Prime Minister Abe poured his heart into, then be united among the countries which share the fundamental values. I sincerely hope that at this conference, which gathered distinguished guests from Japan and the United States, you all will have lively discussion conducted to the promotion of FOIP, solidarity of democracies, and global peace and security. Hamada Yasukazu.
Thank you very much, Mita-san. And now we'll pass on to the economist Hamada-san, Koichi Hamada-san of Yale University and University of Tokyo. Hamada-san, are you there, please? Hamada 先生、お願いいたします。5分間のメッセージ。Professor Hamada, are you here with us?
Unmute. Please unmute. Yeah. Koshi, please unmute. Please unmute your microphone in your computer. We don't hear you. Please unmute. Yeah, please. You hear me?
Hamada Sensei, can you hear me? You're muted, it looks like.
Ah, yes.
Yes,
Just now,
please.
ちょっと電話を消す。申し訳ありません。私の年齢は、my age is above computer age, and it happened. The minister now spoke, has a father called same name in pronunciation, Koichi Hamada. And my teacher at Yale, James Tobin, once wrote me, I wonder, Koichi Hamada, who appeared in the news with Mr. Tanaka Kakue, is not the same person as you. But thank you very much for this opportunity. I celebrate Boston Global Forum and thank in particular Tuna Nguyen and Nobue Mita for this important occasion to celebrate the heritage of late Shinzo Abe. Since my time is very limited, I would like to talk about three things. First, the Japanese economy. Second, about his role as a global leader, which is already covered by my friend Mr. Yanai, so I will be brief about it. And his humanity. First, when Mr. Abe became Prime Minister for the second term at the end of 2012, Japan suffered from a long stagnation, some say 2 decades or 3 decades. That was caused by, in my opinion, by the too expensive exchange rate, yen rate, and that was caused by the inaction of proper monetary policies. Fortunately, this view, or unfortunately, is shared by Ben Bernanke, who criticized the Bank of Japan before he became the governor of a Federal Reserve. Japan as a self-induced paralysis. Anyway, Mr. Abe came into the cabinet as the prime minister and appointed Haruhiko Kuroda as the governor of the Bank of Japan. And in several years, what it was called Abenomics, or the first era of Abenomics, monetary policy, achieved to increase the employment of Japan about 5 million new jobs. 5 million abstract, but it's like 100 times of the number of the seats in the Yankees stadium. So the young people revived investment into Japan, and technical progress started to revive. At the funerals of Shinzo Abe, Tokyo was filled with so many young people who came to give flowers to him. My friend told me he stayed about 8 hours on the street, moving procession. So it is no wonder that they really liked this economic policy. Second is the leadership in the world. Since there are many already minister explained, I will be brief. First, Bureau of Defense became Ministry of Defense by his help. Secondly, he already mentions he didn't only think about confrontation with missiles or neighboring violences, but he also thought of international cooperation with free, open Indo-Pacific, some kind of quadrangle way of cooperating, in addition to be strong in defense, but at the same time be friendly to all nations. And I think this meeting today is one of the most effective way of doing international cooperation arising from the center of the Asia. And I really appreciate the entrepreneurship and kindness of Mr. Tuan Nguyen. Finally, he was very generous, kind, humanistic person. I once thought I might have introduced foreign economist to talk to him who wasn't so effective. So I expected some complaint from him, but he never reprimanded about it. And Mrs. Abe, Kiet Abe, said he kept supporting, defending his wife, unlike some traditional Japanese husband. And finally, you will sometime hear the piano playing of Mr. Abe. He liked beauty. His book is called The Beautiful Japan. And his artistic interest and understanding must have really helped his great statesmanship. I feel I was very lucky and privileged to be an effective, I hope, advisor of him. I do really miss him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Hamada. It's very good to see you after so many years. You look very good. Thank you. And now
Thank you
I'd like
very-
to thank you. I'd like to go to Ohara-san. Ohara-san, please.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Fujisaki. Good evening, the United States, and good morning, the United States, and good evening from Japan. And I'm Bonji Ohara, the senior fellow from the Sasagawa Peace Foundation. I have to apologize for my poor English because I did not learn English in high school. I joined the JMSDF, like Navy, just after I graduated from junior high school. I learned English on the USS Blue Ridge, the seventh flagship of the 7th Fleet US Navy. And anyway, I was really lucky to have an opportunity to talk with former Prime Minister Abe after joining the TV program with him. He kindly told me that his idea about security and the Japanese role in the international cooperation. And, I would like to address the issues in the traditional security and the military domain as an expert of security. In terms of the security, the Prime Minister Abe's legacy can be divided into mainly two. One is to Japanese society and people, and one is to regional and international community. The first one is the environment in which the everybody can discuss the security issues publicly. In Japan, it was taboo to discuss the security issues, especially military things before. But Prime Minister Abe changed the mindset of the Japanese people. I could not believe, or I could not imagine the present situation in which we can discuss the military thing in the TV programs. Before some of media focused the self-defense force as a target of the condemnation, and their achievement were really reported. But now the many of media reported the self-defense force operation, especially in the HADR, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Meanwhile, the Japanese society was not interested in the security issues. Then the security environment around Japan has deteriorated significantly with the North Korean nuclear weapon development and the China's attempt to change status quo in the East China Sea and South China Sea based on the its rapid armed buildup. And the situation, in those situations, the usual or normal nation no longer remain the indifferent. But at the moment, Japanese society basically indifferent. Although but Prime Minister Abe tried to change the situation in the Japanese society and tried to Japanese society to allow the discussion concerning the security issues and the military things. Although the Prime Minister Abe was sometimes criticized as a nationalist by the few medias or others. But he never imposed his idea on the Japanese people, society, with the authoritarian manner. He just tried to keep discussion with people, although the Japanese society at that time, the let's say, Japanese Prime Minister Abe's effort at that time, they encountered the strong rejection from the Japanese society. I think he was not nationalist because he's always considering the Japanese role in the international cooperation, and but he was a patriot. So the Japanese people at last trust him and allow the discussion about the security issues, military things. So now the many of Japanese people recognize that we need to discuss the security issues based on the correct information. Now, on the other hand, what the Prime Minister Abe demonstrated to the regional or international community was not only the Japanese own security effort. He raised the new concept of the security to the international community. And the basic idea is that the security of each country can be guaranteed only while the regional stabilities and international orders are maintained. So the Prime Minister Abe raised the other expression of that, the proactive contribution to peace by Japan. So Prime Minister Abe was always considering the Japanese role in the international cooperation to how to achieve the goal of the stability and the prosperity of the international community. So the those kind of the awareness we need to maintain because now we understand the there are still countries that use aggressive or coercive means against other countries to force them to do what the countries want to do, one country want. But we need to maintain the situation in which no nation is compelled to act by their military power or other coercive means of the another countries. And an example of this is, as we all know, the President Putin's invasion on the Ukraine. And his use of force was shown the international community that the even today there is a country to that they wage wars of aggression. But Japan and other Western nations could not deter President Putin to conduct the armed invasion. But we must not allow him to succeed. If the countries with the desire to change the status quo by forces also learn a lot lessons from the situation in Ukraine. If the perception of that the status quo or can be changed by forces becomes widespread, then it could cause other violence, not only in the Europe, but also in different regions of the world. And the international orders could be lost. As a result, many countries, including Japan, could be threatened by the military power of other countries. Although the concept raised by the Prime Minister Abe focused on the Indo-Pacific, free and open Indo-Pacific, but he was not uninterested in other regions and the international community, as I said. His idea is expressed as a proactive contribution to peace by Japan. And Japan will take the initiative in the Indo-Pacific region to realize the FOIP and link the Japanese effort to the other efforts in Europe and in other regions. So we could achieve the goal of the stable and prosperous international community. At the time when there are concern the President Putin's invasion of Ukraine may affect the Asia and undermine the international order, we should take the Japanese people should take advantage of the environment provided by the Prime Minister Abe and keep discussion about the Japanese role to role about the how to achieve the those kind of situation of international community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ohara-san. Now I'd like to ask Nakayama-san to give his impression, experience, and his views on Abe-san's policy and diplomacy. Thank you very much.
Good morning from Japan, and good evening to everyone, for the Japanese and the Asians. And thank you very much for inviting me here. And respect Thomas Patterson Sensei from Harvard, and Nazari Chukri Sensei from MIT, and Yale University Professor Dr. Koichi Hamada, and also Tuan-san. Thank you for doing this kind of really great occasion for Shinzo Abe. And so first of all, I'm very great honor that the Shinzo Abe Initiative will be held today and hosted by the Boston Global Forum. On behalf of my colleagues, I belong to, as a politician, I belong to a study group and also the faction inside of the Liberal Democratic Party. I was a member of the Abe faction, which still exists as a name, as an honor. I'd like to express my heartfelt gratitude on behalf of my colleagues. And I worried about Dr. Michael Dukakis Sensei might catch cold. So please come to Japan and receive great Japanese hot spring onsen treatment. Then he will get better, I think. And at the same time, on the night Shinzo Abe was assassinated, I stayed with Shinzo Abe at the hospital in Nara, where he was taken by ambulance until morning. I was with Mrs. Akie Abe and also Shinzo Abe's brother-in-law, Isao, and NSC, former NSC director, Shigeru Kitamura. And there is lots of view and also lots of evaluation of Shinzo Abe. Regarding of the objective evaluation of Shinzo Abe, please refer to the Mainichi Shimbun poll. By the way, when Shinzo Abe was alive, the Mainichi Shimbun was considered to be a media that was generally critical of Mr. Abe's policies and the political stance. They sometimes criticize it. When asked about Abe's achievements, 37% of respondents said they highly appreciate his achievements, and 33% said they somewhat appreciate. 70% answered that they do not evaluate it very much, and 12% answered that they do not evaluate it at all. Achievements of Prime Minister Abe, but you can understand that almost 70% of the respondents they thanked to Abe's what he done for our nation and also also for the world. Even the Mainichi Shimbun poll. And also, what you can remember, all the doctors and the professors and the ambassadors and ministers and the thinkers already remind about Abe Shinzo's legacy. And I can, can be recalled that the revision of the fundamental law of education, defense agency, he changed it to the Ministry of Defense, and also referendum law, and the increasing in the numbers of regular employees, active job opening ratio exceeded one by, the correction of yen appreciation, revision of the security law, establishment of NSCs, and preparatory crimes such as terrorism, and also special security protection law, Quad, Abe Statement, Japan-Korea Agreement. There are many other things. But the issue with North Korea was the one that he had the strongest attachment to. There are abduction issues. The North Koreans kidnapped the Japanese people and the hostages. And also, of course, North Korea lately launching a lot of missile, including the ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, which reaches to United States even, and also missile technology and development issue. And it left a strong impression on me that even in meetings with the President of the United States, Abe was always said it as the most important issue, which is abduction issue by the North Koreans, and so on. But the biggest thing is also Bonji Sensei mentioned about the FOIP, free and open Indo-Pacific. The fact commitment to the Taiwan Strait and a visit to Israel. I also visit Israel with him, and also a visit to Hawaii, Honolulu, with President Obama. Why important visit to Honolulu? It's because Obama visited Hiroshima, and we, the Prime Minister Abe, visited where the place that the World War II begins. It's Pearl Harbor. So we get together the start point and end point, and we learn lots of things, but especially the reconciliation is the most important thing, what we have learned and what I heard directly from Shinzo Abe when we visited Honolulu together. And what do you think about the situation in Ukraine now? At the time when democracy and tyranny, I mean the autocrats countries, are being fought in Europe, what should Japan, the United States, within its superpowers and its fellow democracies do? There are problems that cannot be solved with just public appearance, but Shinzo Abe announced before his death that an emergency in Taiwan is an emergency in Japan. On the fossil fuels imported to Japan, I mean the oil from the Middle East to Japan, from the Middle East, 90% are imported to Japan through Taiwan's Bashi Strait. Also, the 60% of the natural gas resources coming to Japan passes through Taiwan's Bashi Strait and is imported to Japan. Now that Taiwan is becoming a crisis situation that could become tomorrow's Ukraine in Europe, in Asia. Even in the United States, a senior United States military official has testified to the Congress that the Chinese People's Liberation Army may cross the Taiwan Strait and attack Taiwan within 6 years. In addition, Secretary of State Mr. Blinken pointed out that the opinion that the possibility of a Taiwan crisis may be accelerated in the form of further updating the information. So what I like to say is, Shinzo Abe already, he is a dead man. Dead man never come back. But what he spread as a seed and a hint to think about the future politics, we have to use regarding his imagination, and also the philosophically as a politician and a statesman. He always think the geopolitic, and also the differences between what is a democracy and what the importance of the democratic the nations, and also the people who live in those countries, compare to not just the communist country in a Cold War era, but now the communists become dictators or the autocrats. So it's beyond the ideology, political ideology. So, but on the other hand, we also have a new age and also the new warfare, the issue, like a cybersecurity issue. And of course, Dr. Nazli Chukli is a professional about AI, artificial intelligence issue, and also the outer space, the space technology issue. If the Russia and also the China collaborate in outer space, already the numbers of the satellites is already they have many compared to the US collaborate with Japan. And so we have to think those kind of new generation, and those also the new warfare to how to say, to combine the way of thinking where the Abe was focusing on in the future. And I hope we, the people who attending this event tonight and this morning, I hope that we have to use lots of imagination to think on behalf of Shinzo, and we should show the new direction to the young generation who is now serving for the country, and also the studying in those great universities where you are teaching right now. So thank you very much again on behalf of Japanese politicians who trust in Shinzo's policy, and thank you very much for loving our great former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Thank you very much. ありがとうございます。
Thank you, Nakayama-san, for a very insightful statement. I myself have known Abe-san for 40 years, like Ambassador Yanai, before Abe-san became politician, when he was carrying the bag of his father. And I thought he was a very well-bred, refined individual. And I was very impressed that he was so studious, reading so many things, studying so much as well. And because of those very decent and studious character of himself, he was very self-assured. He was very sure of himself. And because of that, two things come out. One, he was a great communicator. He was able to communicate with sometimes people think difficult to communicate, like your former President, Mr. Trump, or Mr. Erdogan of Turkey, or those leaders. He was able to disarm and charm and make a great relations with them as well. Second, when he makes decisions, he listens to many, but then when he makes decisions, he would stick to that. Very clear. And his philosophy was so clear that he does not step back even he was criticized. So I think these are the very strong characters he had because of his upbringing, because of his way of working. And we were very happy that we were able to have a very strong leader we could always be proud of, not only in this country, but I think he was able to contribute a lot for Indo-Pacific region, US-Japan alliance. I have asked him to be honorary president of US-Japan relation. I'm sorry, America-Japan Society, and he gladly accepted, saying that US-Japan relations is what he really has been pursuing so many years, and he loves to contribute. Thank you very much for this discussion, Ambassador Yanai, Professor Ohara, and State Minister Nakayama. I would like to give this back to Mita-san. So thank you very much.
On behalf of the Boston Global Forum, thank you for these thoughts and insights, fitting tributes to the contributions to Japan, the US, the world of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The Shinzo Abe Initiative for Peace and Security is an ongoing commitment from the Boston Global Forum, and it will shape much of what we do in the years ahead. We're honored this morning to have with us the Consulate General of Japan in Boston, Suzuki Kadara. Mr. Kadara, would you like to say a few words to the group?
Yeah,
please. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm honored, but at the same time embarrassed to speak after such distinguished speakers. As a new Consul General of Japan in Boston, I've arrived in Houston barely 1 month ago, so I'll be brief. But I am impressed that our former Prime Minister Abe's legacy and what he tried and actually built are still cherished and seriously discussed in this town of Boston among the not only Japanese and American scholars and decision makers, but also our friendly countries from across Asia. So as a Consul General of Japan, I would like to say that in this century of ours, where the uncertainty is more and more, the recognized and felt by the not only the Japanese but across Asia, what would be the optimal structure and the arrangement in our region wouldn't be this is a more acutest issue we and the people the younger generation would face. So for this I'm thankful that Boston Forum made this occasion possible for us all. Thank you very much.
I'll mention. Mr. Kotaro, thank you so much. The Michael Dukakis has joined us. So I think you can see Mike probably in one of those small windows. Would you like to speak at this point, or would you like to speak later?
You can, Mike, could you talk now?
Wrong with my connection here. But so I'll be very, very brief. But first, it's a pleasure to welcome so many of you to this discussion, and especially to focus on two extraordinary human beings who contributed so much to their countries, to the world, and to world peace. And one of whom was obviously tragically taken from us, and somebody who I had an opportunity to meet from time to time. And this extraordinary Vietnamese statesman who really had an extraordinary life and had the courage to take unpopular stands and to really provide great statesmanship as well. So I welcome you all. I'm very sorry that for reasons I don't understand, I'm not getting you, and even over the telephone, it's pretty rough. So I'm going to step back and look forward to the discussion in the hope that I can understand at least some of the sound. And obviously, with Tuan and Tom and others, want to welcome you all to this discussion and to simply tell you how pleased we are that you are part of this. And I'm personally sorry I can't participate as clearly and as effectively as I would like to, but it's a pleasure to be part of this, and we look forward to working with you and to seeing if we can't put together an international effort that minimizes conflict and maximizes cooperation. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. We're also fortunate to have with us this morning Jonathan Sun, who's the Director General for the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Boston. Mr. Sun, please.
Good morning. I'm very honored to be invited to this 10th anniversary conference and being invited to speak to you about Taiwan. First, I want to briefly introduce my office. The former name of my office is Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Boston, but we are actually the de facto consulate general of Taiwan in New England. So we presume basically the same function as any consulate general here in Boston. So since one of today's subject is to reflect on Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's legacy, I want to once again express our sincere sympathy to our friends in Japan from the people and the government of Taiwan. Mr. Abe is an architect of the free and open Indo-Pacific and the Quad. His contribution to regional peace and security will be forever remembered. During the past 2 years, Taiwan has attracted global attention, not only because its important semiconductor industries, which produce about 62% of chips in the entire world, and also 92% of high-end chips, but also because of China's increasingly coercive and aggressive measures toward Taiwan. The 72-hour live fire drill launched by China against Taiwan in August this year once again proves just how irresponsible and irrational China really is by firing ballistic missiles over Taiwan and into Taiwan's territorial waters. China single-handedly has undermined the status quo in the Taiwan Strait and also created a new normal. In fact, over the years, the frequency of China's military aircraft flying into Taiwan's air defense identification zone, ADIZ, and crossing the median line in the Taiwan Strait has increased dramatically. In 2019, the number stood at around 380. In 2020, the number shot up to 975. This year, it has exceeded over 3,000, including 2,000 sorties in August and September this year. Through daily military intimidations, gray zone activities, influence operations, cyber attacks, and the periodic attempts like economic coercion, China aims to create doubt and undermine confidence in what the Taiwanese people have worked so diligent for, which is our democratic way of life. The cross-strait tensions remain high. There's no military conflict existing in the Taiwan Strait. Why? That's because Taiwan continue to exercise restraint. We have reiterated time again that Taiwan wants peace, not war. We will neither instigate dispute nor escalate tensions. We will prepare for the worst, but we'll never start a war. The government of Taiwan is committed to maintaining peace and security in the Taiwan Strait. This is not only a commitment to the people of Taiwan, but also to the people and the countries in the region and the world, which we will solemnly honor. Since the majority of people in Taiwan reject China's one China principle and its failed one country, two system formula, which is actually designed for Taiwan and then applied to Hong Kong, and also has clearly proven to be failed by what happened in Hong Kong. The democratically elected government of Taiwan cannot accept China's terms without people's consent. However, we're open to having a meaningful dialogue with China on the principles of dignity and priority, and without political preconditions. Our bottom line is the four commitments that President Tsai noted in her 2021 National Day remarks, which is a free and democratic constitutional system, the Republic of China, commonly known as Taiwan, and the People's Republic of China should not be subordinate to each other. Taiwan will resist any annexation or encroachment upon our sovereignty, and the Taiwanese people must decide the future of Taiwan. Taiwan is a responsible stakeholder and a force for good in the world. We have actually donated during the pandemic over millions of masks to over 80 countries. Taiwan has never been and will never be a troublemaker. Our democracy stands as a beacon of hope to the Chinese people around the world. Taiwan's strategic position in the first island chain is vital to stop China's ambition. However, Taiwan cannot deter China alone. As a Harvard professor, Mr. Joseph Nye has said, the only one can deter China is China itself. The key is to the solidarity among like-minded democracies, and China's provocative and assertive actions in the East and the South China Sea also threaten relevant countries such as Japan and Vietnam. We're pleased to see more and more democracies in the international community openly voice concerns about China's provocations and express support for Taiwan. Taiwan will continue to work closely with its friends and partners to safeguard peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait and for the early realization of Mr. Abe's vision, free and open Indo-Pacific. Thank you.
Mr. Sun, thank you very much. We're going to go back to Japan for a video tribute to Shinzo Abe.
いいですか。じゃあ、Tom, please, video, please. Tom.
ただいまご紹介いただきました杉山でございます。今日は、皆様方お集まりの中で、呼んどころない事情でご参加できませんので、このような形で、ビデオでご挨拶差し上げることをどうかお許しください。私から、ご紹介をせよと言われたのは、安倍総理がいかにこの自由で開かれたインド太平洋概念、構想というものを、早きに及んで、提唱し、そして公に日本国の総理として、これを掲げ、それが今や、安倍総理の考え構想、日本の考え構想というよりは、国際社会の中で広く認められるようになった、構想になったというこの経緯について、若干僭越ながら私が感じていることを、存じ上げることを、申し上げたくて、このビデオに向かってお話をさせていただいています。安倍総理におかれては早きに及んで、確か2006年か2007年に2つの太陽、インド洋と太平洋を結ぶこのインド太平洋構想の端緒になるようなことをもうお話をされていました。ただこの構想が日本政府の公の構想となって安倍総理から発表される、発信されたのは確か2014年のアフリカ開発会議TICAD の時だったように記憶をしています。で、当初は我が国の唯一の同盟国であるアメリカにおいても、この安倍総理の構想というのは、すぐにすんなり受け入れられたり、なんていうんですかね、みんなでこういうことでやろうという感じであったわけでは必ずしもないように思います。それも理解ができないことはありません。日本と豪州は共にアメリカの同盟国でありますけれど、インド洋の大きな国インドというのは、伝統的には非同盟中立、ということを標榜してきた外交的歴史的な経緯がありますし、そういうことで、インド洋太平洋を結ぶ構想自体はいいかもしれないけれども、その柱となる、実際の推進する外交上の枠組みとして、アメリカ、日本、豪州という同盟国だけではなくて、世界最大の人口を要する民主国家であるインドをこの中に入れて、そして日米豪印という4カ国、最近 FOIP という呼ばれ方をしてるんだろうと思いますが、そのような形でこの構想を推進しようということには、最初は若干の躊躇みたいなものがあったように感じられます。でしかし、それが時を経るに及んでですね、トランプ大統領もこの自由で開かれたインド太平洋構想、これを日米豪印の首脳が集まったり、あるいは外務大臣が集まったりして、その4カ国によって推進するということに、徐々に理解を深め、またこれに対する強い賛同の意を表するようになったように思います。現実問題としてトランプ大統領だけではなくて、バイデン大統領、昨年の1月20日に就任されて、直ちに3月だったと記憶してますけれども、オンラインではありましたが、バイデン大統領が主催をして、この日本、豪州インドの首脳と会合を持つと そして、その時は菅総理で、菅総理が訪米されて、日米首脳会談を行った時も、ワシントンで行った時も、この自由で開かれたインド太平洋構想が、首脳会談の大きな、テーマの一つになると。つい半年ぐらい前、今年の5月だったと思いますけれども、岸田総理になられて、岸田総理が、米国豪州、そしてインドの首脳を東京にお招きして、先ほど申し上げた FOIP、日米豪印の首脳会談を行って、自由で開かれたインド太平洋構想というのをさらに推進するということを行ってきて、今や実はこの構想はもともと安倍総理が先ほど申し上げたように、国内でも国際社会でも衝動し、発信し、外交的なイニシアチブを取って、そして、こういう大きな一つの柱を立てたというか、胸になったものなんでありますが、トランプ政権だいぶ経ってからは、もうトランプ大統領ご自身がこの構想を、大きく推進するという感じになりましたし、バイデン大統領も先ほど申し上げたように就任してすぐに、この構想に基づいて日米豪印の首脳会談を、主催するということでありますから、最近は、この構想はなんと話にアメリカ主導で行われたように印象を持つ方もおられるかもしれませんけれども、それ自体は私は非常にいいことだというふうに思っていますけれど、だけど経緯をたどればですね、これは安倍総理初、あるいは日本政府初、日本初の外交的な構想、イニシアチブであったことは事実として間違いがありません。こういう構想を高らかに掲げられたやっぱり安倍総理の指導力、構想力、発信力、外交力、これは日本の総理として類いまれなるものがあったと私は確信をしていますし、またそういう安倍総理を生んだ日本の外交、発信、構想力というものはやはり我々が国内で考えている以上に国際社会では高く評価をされているようなふうに私は感じております。今日は短い時間の中でこの安倍総理とインド太平洋の自由で開かれたインド太平洋構想ということについて簡単にお話をしろということでございましたので、こういう話をいたしました。話を締めくくるにあたって最後にですね、私は一昨年の1月の末にワシントンを離任して2月に公務員を退官したものでありますけれど、ちょうどワシントンを離任するときにホワイトハウスに日本、豪州、インドのワシントンに駐在する大使が呼ばれて、そしてそれぞれの首脳に対してトランプ大統領からの聞くところによるとなんか最高位の勲章だったそうでありますが、この自由で開かれたインド太平洋ということを推進したことに対してアメリカ政府が高くこれを評価し感謝するという意味で、その勲章を伝達する式がホワイトハウスの中で行われ、私も日本政府の代表としてそこに参列いたしました。この勲章はそれぞれの首脳に贈られたものでありますから、直ちにその勲章勲旗を安倍総理のお手元にお届けするとともに、帰国の折は当時お元気であった安倍総理を衆議院の議員会館の事務所にお訪ねしてご挨拶をし、顛末をご報告したところでありますが、その時に総理の執務室にはこのアメリカ大統領から授与された勲章勲旗が飾ってあったことを鮮明に覚えております。去る7月、あろうことか、凶弾に倒れ暗殺された安倍総理、このご冥福を改めて心からお祈りするということを申し上げて、この安倍総理が発信構想された極めて強い外交力を持ったこの自由で開かれたインド太平洋の構想というのはますます 国際社会の中で、議論をし発展していくということを、心から望んでいるということを申し上げて、私の簡単なビデオによるご挨拶にさせていただきたいと思います。どうもご清聴ありがとうございました。
Did it go okay?
Sound is stopped, but it's okay.
But did you do it?
Yes.
And yours was fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was muted. Sometimes it's strange.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I wish to explain what we should do to build upon the achievement of the late Prime Minister Abe, who was assassinated last July. He will be remembered as one of the greatest prime ministers of Japan. Maybe together with Yoshida-san, he will be the greatest prime ministers of Japan. Let me explain what he did and what we should continue to do after his death. He tries to sustain and expand the liberal international order, not only in the West, but also he wished to expand it into Asia Pacific and Indian Ocean. This was his true desire. The liberal international order are led by the Westerners, the advanced industrial nations. But in this century, the West could be marginalized because Asia will occupy 60% of world population. Not only that, 60% of the world production. We should expand into Asia, and that is our mission. And the liberal order is based upon principles. Human dignity is absolutely equal, regardless of skin color, the creeds, political creeds, religion, sex, and the birthplaces. Doesn't matter. Humans are all equal. They have conscience. They share the basic feeling of love. That's the reason why the people can live together and overcome difficulties. For survival, we are given the very basic ethic emotions called love. And this is where we are. That's the reason why we can make an inclusive society as in a nation, but as a globe. As a global community, we should be able to establish the inclusive society. And the key issue is whether the Western values can be expanded into the global South, and then our universal values can be truly universal, simply because universality can be polished and perfectioned in diversity. And this is where we are. And Prime Minister Abe launched many ideas. The one is the very famous free and open in the Pacific. The industrialization started in Europe and went to the United States. Atlantic became the powerhouse of the world economy. That moved to Asia Pacific region in 1980s, 90s. And now it's moving out to Indian Ocean. Then the world can be one as an industrial society. And Abe-san said this in Kenyatta. And he said that Africa should be connected to this. And this is this century's challenge. And free and open in the Pacific means the nations who do share the universal values should cooperate. And here, the important factor is India. And India is the only one democracy among the three major continentals in the Euro-Asian continent: Russians, Chinese, and Indians. To defeat Hitler, the Westerners took hands of Stalin. To face Russians, the Westerners took hands of Mao. Enemy's enemy was always friend. India is very different. India is a born democracy. This is a creation of Gandhi and Nehru. First time among the three big continentals, the West is taking hands of the great democratic society, India. Of course, they're independent, and for them, they have national interests. But they do have a long, long history of satyagraha, that's truth and love. And the Indians, of course, need Russians to counterbalance China, and their economic thinking is very close to socialist. But the India will become bigger population nation only after the biggest population nation, sorry, the India will be the #1 populated nation maybe next year, and India will surpass Japan's economic size soon in 10 years' time, and their population is 10 years younger than the Chinese population, and they become a superpower. We need Indians. We can stabilize the whole strategic framework, and we can expand together with the Indians into Asia Pacific region and Indian Ocean region, together with our universal values. Universal values are not only white Christian values. These are very widely shared by the Asians, and Asians can introduce Western democratic institutions. There are some difficulties still to swallow it, but in 1980s, 1990s, many nations are struggling to establish their democratic system. They have the values, but they do not have a system, and they are now testing it. The Philippines 1987, Korea 1986, and Korea 1987, and Taiwan 1996, sorry. Many nations are sometimes shaky, but they are proudly coming into our camp. We have to take their hands and see to back up this free and open Indo-Pacific. Prime Minister Abe started Quad. As I said, India is important. And in this region, American allies are Japanese and Australians and Koreans and Filipinos. And they have said this is not very strong in comparison with NATO. So we took hands of Indians and Quad started. We hope very much that Korean government changes their strategic direction in accordance with their political direction, the leftist and the conservative, the Yoon Suk-yeol and the Moon Jae-in. But we have to encourage Korea to take a global responsibility together with the major American allies in the region. And Quad can be Cinque. And AUKUS is very much welcome. Global Great Britain is very much welcome. And we are trying to establish closer ties with NATO and EU. NATO is a geographical limits very clearly, but cyberspace has no geographic limits. And anyway, to counter systemic challenge from China, all the West should cooperate. And we wish to expand our ties with NATO too. And I have said, Prime Minister Abe worked very hard for free trade. And he is maybe the only one leader who expanded the free trade zones in globally. He made the Japan-EU free trade zone, and he is one of the established, the founder of the RCEP. That's China, Japan, and the Korea, and Australia, New Zealand, and all ASEAN nations. We are sorry that US is not here, and we tried to introduce Indians here, but they finally refused. And after Americans dropping out, Prime Minister pushed forward the idea of CPTPP. Now he was successful, and he created the major free economic zones globally because he believed in it. The exchange is the very much human activities. No animals do that. And through exchanges, we can realize the best distribution of resources. And that means wealth and industrial power goes down to global south. This is because of a market. And market forces push the investments to the places where there are resources, human resources in particular, and factories move out. And the advanced nations, of course, they have to enhance their productivity, but they have to accept this fate. And for survival, the productivity enhancement is the only way for keeping the status in this industrialized world. And people should work on that. Advanced nations should work on that. But now we have to take care of somehow economic statecrafts. We have to prepare for contingencies, pandemic, and the big earthquake, tsunami. The network of the supply chain is now so widely expanded globally. Now we have to somehow patch up with the challenge. We have to cope with the challenges to make the supply chains more resilient. Finally, let me touch upon Taiwan. Xi Jinping established his own government, his third government. This is a bit different government from the previous ones. All the elite from the communist youth group were eliminated, and this is his own family government. And his final purpose is to incorporate Taiwan, even forcibly. He extinguished the freedom torch of Hong Kong, and he is now pressing Uyghurs. And Taiwanese independence is a fatal blow to Chinese unity, and he will, by any means, to realize the Taiwan annexation. Abe-san, he decided to engage our forces in combat operations outside Japan. This is a huge leap in Japanese constitutional history. When Japan was defeated, we came back to our home islands and abandoned Korea and Taiwan, and Americans abandoned Philippines. Americans said using Japanese bases, they can defend these outer spaces of Japan. We said, fine, you should do that. We're very happy to see that. 1999, when North Korea could trigger war because of the heavy sanctions against their nuclearization, Americans asked us to help them. So Prime Minister Obuchi said we can engage our forces in non-combat operations outside Japan to help US forces. Abe-san said it is not enough. We have to deter the war. Then we should say in the beginning that we can participate in the war to help Americans in combat operations. That makes us safer, and we have to do it. A huge oppositions to this by the leftists and the leftist papers Abe-san went through. His support ratio dropped by 10%, but soon after that jumped up again to the same level. These are where we are now. We have to build up on his achievements and sustain, enhance the liberal international order in this century. That's our job left by the Prime Minister Abe. Thank you very much.
Hello.
I am Tomohiko Taniguchi. Hello. I am Tomohiko Taniguchi. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I do appreciate that. As Shinzo Abe's foreign policy speechwriter, I had the privilege of spending countless hours talking with the late Prime Minister and musing about what was going on in his mind, so I can grasp his ideas, vision, and worldview to help communicate them to the people of Japan and to the world. Firstly, Prime Minister Abe was a globetrotter in the truest sense. With Abe aboard, the Japanese government aircraft flew 1.58 million kilometers, almost 40 times the circumference of the equator. He visited a total of 176 countries and forged bonds with 3 successive leaders of the United States, Australia, and Britain, 2 prime ministers of India, as well as strong men such as Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and then Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The list goes on. He accomplished this in spite of Tokyo's Spartan political schedule. According to one study, then British Prime Minister David Cameron spent less than 50 hours on the front bench of the parliament during the parliamentary session between 2015 and 2016. In contrast, Abe spent almost 370 hours in the same year. To do that, Abe had to use almost all weekends to travel abroad with almost no time off. Mr. Abe took on such a brutal travel schedule out of strategic reasons. He wanted to expand Japan's diplomatic horizon and invest in relations with democratic allies and partners with the belief that only by uplifting Japan's international status could Japan defend itself from the coercive behaviors from its neighbors, Russia, North Korea, and China, all of which are nuclear powers with
Again, on behalf of the Boston Global Forum, thank you for these tributes and reflections. One of the initiatives of the Boston Global Forum is to think about what are the pillars of peace and security. Peace and security have been enduring themes of this organization, trying to foster and forward those ideals. We're going to hear first from Cameron Carey, the former Secretary of Commerce, Acting Secretary of Commerce, and then he will be joined by Tuan, and I will not jump up to introduce Tuan. We'll just have Tuan follow Cam, and then we'll have respondents to their remarks, and I will introduce them collectively after Cam and Tuan have spoken. Cam.
Thank you, Tom and Tuan. It's a genuine honor to be here with you today. I am on this occasion to honor the work of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe with this initiative for peace and security. And I am genuinely humbled to be here with so many distinguished officials who worked with Prime Minister Abe, worked so closely with him and understand his thinking that we've heard about today. And he is somebody who understood that security comes hand in hand with a strong national economy and with international cooperation. And I'm pleased to hear from our representative from Taipei, who reminds us that you can have democracy with Chinese characteristics. And both Taipei, Japan show us that democracy is not simply a Western concept, that the aspirations of self-determination are fundamental to what makes us all human beings. I also want to say a brief word about Prime Minister Viet, who will be honored later as well. I'm of the generation in America that grew up amidst what in Vietnam is known as the American War. And of course, my brother John Kerry played an important role in reconciliation between Vietnam and America. We've heard
this today of the importance of reconciliation. The visits that President Obama and Prime Minister Abe made to Hiroshima and to Pearl Harbor. And Prime Minister Wolfgang Viet played an important role in advancing reconciliation between Vietnam and America. It's also, say, a pleasure to be here with Dukakis-san, my erstwhile boss and a friend, Michael. We wish you and Kitty well. I talked a little bit yesterday about the international settings in which we meet, major global events with COP27, with FIFA World Cup, and other less visible events as well. I began yesterday at midnight our time in the US, joining a meeting in Japan of the Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence, and to talk about some of the avenues of international cooperation in that field that we talked about yesterday with Ambassador Gill, the UN envoy on technology. The Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence is a legacy of Shinzo Abe. It comes out of the Japanese presidency of the G20, and that work continues today. And we are now on the cusp of a Japanese presidency of the G7, which will carry forward these efforts. Another important initiative that came out of that is from Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is data free flows with trust. We heard yesterday Sandy Pentland talked about how actually Xi Jinping had said that data is now one of the pillars of production, along with labor, capital, and resources. And the international cooperation and the success of building networks around the world will depend on initiatives like the data free flows with trust. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the broader context that within which initiatives like the Global Partnership on AI, like data free flows with trust, like the technical cooperation that we talked about yesterday, in which those take place. We are living today in a new world in many respects. The world order that all of us grew up with, the post-World War II order, the post-Cold War order, really is, in many respects, no longer. Elements are there, but we need to build a new order to deal with the challenges that are global, challenges like climate change, like technology that transcends borders, and with the challenges of authoritarianism from from China, particularly from Russia, and elsewhere in the world. And a few weeks ago, the White House released its national security strategy for the current administration. So just a month ago. And it's called What Comes Next. It recognizes these changes in the world and talks about building a new rules-based order with a few elements. It offers to partner with any nation that is willing to build this rules-based order. It says that the order we seek builds on what came before. So we have elements there, alliances, the World Trade Organization, and others. But all of those need rebuilding. And I think the elements of this strategy, I think, are correct. It says, we'll cooperate with any country, including our geopolitical rivals, that's willing to work constructively to address shared challenges. And we need that. And we saw in China Sheikh the need for that, to work alongside China on climate change, for example. The second part, though, is to develop and deepen our cooperation with democracies and other like-minded states. And what I see particularly welcome is that this national strategy says that we are going to break down the boundaries between national security and economic security, or economic policy and national policies. And that is very much along the lines of what Prime Minister Shinzo Abe did in Japan. And it's something that I worked with at the Department of Commerce to break down as we deal with technologies, we deal with the internet, the notion that these are somehow esoteric things. And we have learned in the intervening years the extent to which we depend on information and communications networks. So how do we build this new order? How do we build something that combines both national security and economic security? I think we need to think differently about how we organize in the world. Anne-Marie Slaughter has written about the role of networks in international affairs. And increasingly, that is how things need to operate. If you think of networks, there is no central organization. The internet, for example, we describe as a network of networks. And that's the kind of architecture that we need to build up going forward. So I spoke yesterday, for example, about the work that I've been doing at the Brookings Institution in partnership with the think tank in Brussels on cooperation in artificial intelligence, working with a number of countries in the Track 1.5 discussion. Japan is one, Australia, Singapore, Canada, the European Union, and the United Kingdom alongside the United States. Experts from academia, from the private sector, from civil society, alongside officials. And that is in part the kind of multi-stakeholder efforts that Ambassador Gill spoke about yesterday, that we cannot do things simply on a top-down basis. We need the involvement of all sectors, and we need to work across borders. And there are many different kind of organizations and structures, from the existing alliances of the G7. Remember, it was for a while the G8. The G20 has become more complicated because of some of the democracy versus autocracy dynamics. So we're going to need to look towards new multilateral structures, but not just multilateral, multi-stakeholder, and many diverse initiatives, from data free flows with trust. Last year we saw the declaration, earlier this year, the Declaration of the Future of the Internet, the Summit of Democracies. That is something that is building up. Participated virtually in a meeting that the European Union convened about 3 weeks ago in Prague. A further meeting on the Declaration of the Future of the Internet, bringing additional countries in, and reflecting the energy that the European Union is putting into this. So it's not just a United States effort. We saw in the wake of the attack in New Zealand that was carried live on Facebook and on YouTube, the Christchurch delegation, where numerous companies and civil society organizations joined with the government in New Zealand and others to declare a series of actions to take to prevent the recurrence of that kind of hatred over communications networks. It will take bilateral efforts, multilateral efforts, regional efforts, like ASEAN, like the Quad, and others. I spoke yesterday about the role of the importance, when it comes to technology, of standards development organizations. These are organizations that are multi-stakeholder, that are bottoms up, that are multinational. We need to strengthen those so that they can be more participatory, more representative, less dominated by corporate interests. But those provide the technological know-how to deal with the kinds of challenges that we face in today's society. And we need this. We need to do this together. Most Americans are familiar with what Benjamin Franklin said to the Continental Congress at a time of great challenges, as they embarked and risked their lives to take up arms against the British government. And he said then, we must all hang together, or we will hang separately. And as we work together to build up this new world order, I think what I've outlined in terms of dealing with this, from many different approaches, reminds me of what Robert Kennedy said in South Africa
about reminds me of what Robert Kennedy said about how change is made. He spoke about making ripples and said that those ripples building from a million different centers of energy and daring that can build a mighty wave. And that is what we need to do internationally to build this new order, to create ripples, to build waves. And with those many different efforts, we can succeed and build a framework for both democracy, prosperity, and peace. Thank you very much.
First of all, I would like to say a few words with the Japan side. I know Ambassador Fujisaki is a very enthusiastic and contribute for Boston Global Forum. And the agenda today, yeah, you can see that a little bit flexible with arrange first because there are some change from Japan side and also from here, many exciting. So I think we are flexible for discuss and for talk, and not so much fixed with agenda. But most important, this is the content and our contribution for future, and not only in this conference. Ambassador Fujisaki continue moderator with us in discussion with the topic after conference with by email and many things. We would like to do that. That is our work, not only in conference. So I would like to follow more. So for my yesterday, we do manifesto AIWS action to create an age of global enlightenment. That means concept is a platform framework for today. Also peace and security. As former acting secretary Ken Kerry talk yesterday and today. And I think we also talk in Riga Conference in later October. I talked there about this initiative, the concept for 4 pillars. The first, we need to build very strong pillars for world peace and security. The US, Japan, India, and European alliance, not only India, alliance, this concept expand with European. Very important, yeah, and we know already. But one of them is a fundamental norm and standard that democracy, as Secretary Kerry talk. Yeah, also very important. What value, what platform, what fundamental for that? We need to respect, and any country have to respect the norm. And we create in the social contract for VIH, that is the fundamental for norm standard in the age of AI. And we name that age of global enlightenment. And we need to build very strong tech economy. Tech economy will decide who will win in compete in the world for future. So we need in 4 pillars, very strong economy in tech economy. We show that our advantage, our great development dominate in economy, and show it that is how we make the world better by our work, our strategy in tech economy. And I think White House also very focused on this, and we should contribute more, and not only from this side, Japanese side, India side, EU side, and we hope Ambassador Fushisaki will collect and moderate and engage from Japan thinkers and resource to work with us very much. And we need to do with education, because if we don't have good education, we name that global enlightenment education for every people can become an innovator. The new world with internet, with AI, with mobile, with new technology, we can easy to make our people can become innovator. But they need to have and support from us for special program. And that is the Global Enlightenment Program, education program. We discussed yesterday already also. And by that way, you can see democracy, every people innovator. That means they have voice, they have power, they have right. If they poor, they don't have ability, how they can raise voice and contribute. So I think we need to think about that very much. And Boston Global Forum in manifesto AIWS action to create an ethic global enlightenment. We will do action next year with Harvard, MIT, Stanford, and of course Rome, and many partners in Europe. And we have announced yesterday, we will send to you. And we hope all of us contribute and together for this action plan with a lot of events, mass events, and distribute events. So yes, we will deliver with you the initiative for 4 pillars for peace and security: EU, Japan, US, India. EU, that means European Alliance. The first, then we expand. We need to draw first for 4 pillars. After that, we expand to our alliance, our country with same standards, norms, and so and culture and value as South Korea, Australia, Canada, and Latin America. And of course, we respect as a Taiwan, great image for democracy in Asia, and Japan also. That as Secretary Kerry mentioned, Japan and Taiwan show how democracy can rule everywhere, not only in Europe, not only in America. So yes, should not talk too much and reaction. And thank you so much for your comment today. It's very, very valuable time in Thanksgiving. And for my heart, again, thank you for your contribution very much. Also from Japanese side and special Ambassador Fushisaki. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. I was very impressed by a very strong statement of Secretary Kerry as well as Tuan San. I think one just comment about autocracy versus democracies. We discuss that very often now. And some Asian countries say that don't let us choose between US and China. I hear that from many Asian countries. I tell them that no, we have to choose. But at the same time, we have to tell our Western friends that sometimes you have to be careful of 2 things. One is not to let the other side gang up by pushing them as one group. We have to take them individually. The other issue is that we have to be careful not to let some countries in between to push them to the other side, because we would like to expand our camp as much as possible. We have to continue to say that, but we have to register at the same time ourselves very clearly in democracies. I think Abe-san was very clear in that, and I am very pleased today and honored that our leader is so much admired by people in the United States and in other countries as well. And we are very proud of that. I think he was a common asset and will be missed by everyone. And I'd like to thank Tuan-san, the BGF with Michael Dukakis and other leaders for organizing this. We thank you very much again. Thank you.
Ambassador Fujisawa, thank you so much, and thank you for your continuing support of the Boston Global Forum. And to Tuan, your idea about the four pillars, Franklin D. Roosevelt had his four freedoms. We've got our own leadership here in Tuan, and terrific ideas. And I think you pinpointed exactly what those pillars are and what we need to do to buttress them and to make a contribution to peace and security. So we have three individuals who will respond to Secretary Kerry's and Tuan's remarks. Nam is here with us. Nam is the former Massachusetts Assistant Secretary for Business Development and International Trade.
Right.
We'll follow that with Mike Green from SAIS, and then Sheila Smith, Senior Fellow of Japan Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. Ambassador, do you have an interjection at this point too?
No, I wrote it.
Okay.
Well, you don't have to. No, I want to show you what they do.
Good morning and good evening to our friends in Japan. Thank you so much, Professor Patterson. It's always a real honor for me to be a part of this wonderful discussion at the Boston Global Forum. And a few of our speakers already mentioned that tomorrow is the U.S. Thanksgiving holidays. I'm very grateful to Prime Minister, the late Prime Minister Abe, for his contribution to peace and security. As an Vietnamese American, I feel that when he spoke up about the real threat to our existence as a democratic civilization, the real threat to ours is the China under the control of the Chinese Communist Party. I think that's very important. Very few of our leaders have had enough courage to recognize and speak up about that issue until recently. And he helped us not only to recognize that threat, but also help us to see the barbaric nature of the Communist Party of China. When Prime Minister Abe talking about the US and Japan should react strongly to China threat of invasion of Taiwan, I believe China threatened to crack the heads of people who oppose to that. But a civilized culture nation these days would not use that kind of language or threat when people have differences. And this morning we talk about how to build a lasting peace and security. And I like to offer, again, as a Vietnamese American, about one
three important factors for how to build a lasting peace is reconciliation. The Secretary Kerry mentioned about that. We have seen many wonderful reconciliation between nations after war. One of the most obvious example is the reconciliation between U.S. and Japan, U.S. and Germany after World War II. And we continue to see many conflicts throughout our histories. And the most recent one is happening right now between Ukraine and Russia. From a Vietnamese perspective, we feel that reconciliation is important internally, but also externally, but it's also internally. If the victors of a war, of a conflict, does not reconcile internally with the people, there would not be lasting peace, security, and prosperity. And Vietnam is one example. I think we often talk about what a country should do. I like to offer three things that a victorious regime or government should not do. Three no. No intoxication of victory. No revenge. And no fear of the people. What do I mean by that? Vietnam War ended in 1975, almost 50 years ago. For at least the first 10 years after the war, the victors, I believe, were so intoxicated with victories. I am the best. I only beat American imperialists, so I don't need to have any reconciliation. And I think the arrogancies of the new Vietnamese government at that time delayed the reconciliation between the U.S. and Vietnam for at least 5 or 10 years, and that caused a lot of problems later. But also as individual, right? When we get intoxicated, how do we feel? We lose control. We made wrong decision. And the intoxication by alcohol or by victories cause a lot of problem for the future. So I believe that Ukraine will be victorious, but Ukraine also need to find a way to reconcile with the people on the other side who continue to live in the liberated vision of Ukraine down the road. So the second thing is no revenge. After Vietnam War, for the first 10, 15 years, the new government had many policies that basically punish South Vietnamese, right? And only later on, some of the enlightened leader, I think you may see later, began to feel that, hey, South Vietnamese, North Vietnamese, we were all Vietnamese. So we need to work together to build for the future. During the period 10, 15 years after Vietnam War, I must say that it was the darkest period in our history. And the third thing I like to say, to share, the third no is that no fear of your people. After all, we are people of one country. The revengeful policy, the fear of, I guess, the unknown, caused a lot of problems for Vietnam. South Vietnam had a lot of talent, but those talent were not used to rebuild the country. The talent will be put into the camps. We can name it re-education camp, concentration camp, but create a lot of issue for Vietnam, not just economically, but emotionally, psychologically, because, hey, I will not allow to rebuild my country. I continue to be treated as enemy, which is not good. Not good for the individual, not good for the whole country. So I personally and strongly believe that reconciliation for the people internally sometimes even more important than reconcile with your former external enemies. To rebuild a country, to make sure that we have lasting peace and security, we need to truly have real reconciliation, the way that South Africa has, when Nelson Mandela became the leader of the country. He really brought everybody together because he recognized the real importance of reconciliation. So I think, just to sum it up, we need reconciliation in order to have a real lasting peace and security. Thank you very much.
So that big two people from Japan side, I don't hear. So we can skip and we do for next part. We don't see any.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear the voice from Japan? Hello, Tuan-san.
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for all the contribution from the US side, especially from the Boston. And lastly, we, the Japanese, would like to report that the World Cup held at Qatar, Japan won the game against Germany. That's what I'd like to say at the last point. I hope that Shinzo Abe is also very happy and surprised at the heaven, I guess. So thank you very much. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Well, thank you for the update. I was reluctant to announce the score. At one point, I think Germany was up 1-0. So I think things turned around in that game. So, but thank you again for these wonderful tributes to Shinzo Abe. And again, our initiative in that area is an ongoing commitment on the part of the Boston Global Forum. Let's take about a 3-minute break just to give everyone a chance to stretch. And then we will move to a tribute to the former Vietnamese Prime Minister Kiet. So if you want to just kind of take a break in place and stand and stretch. And,
はい。どうもありがとうございました。
言いますのです。そろそろ去ります。ありがとう。Thank you very much.
はい。
ありがとう。
皆様、柳井先生、藤崎先生、それから
小原
先生の英語は一番日本の学校で学んだ なかったんで一番うまいんじゃないかと思いましたけれども、中山先生の言われたことは非常に全部私も同じように考えることが多くて、とても嬉しく思いました。また短い書いたノートでもティアンさんとノブエさんにお送りしますので、おやすみなさい。ご苦労様でした。
ありがとうございました。
先生ありがとうございます。
ティアンさん、Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We Japanese will live here. Thank you. Thank you.
No, nobody, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are going bed.
Tom, thank you very much for your moderator. Thank you.
Okay, let's, if we could have you reform, and it is the Thanksgiving travel day. I know some of you are probably anxious to get on the road, and we'll keep the program moving. So we're going to start this part of the program with a video tribute to So, should we start the video tribute? Are we ready? Could you retake your seats, and we'll start the video tribute. Thank you. Okay, let's just start it, and then I think they'll.
Please have a seat, and we start for second part. And before playing video of Prime Minister Kiet, I would like to say some word about Prime Minister Kiet. And he is a great leader of Vietnam. And Mr. Nam Tham have just talked need to reconciliation. He is a great leader to go and work and action for reconciliation in Vietnam, and with special with South Vietnam. I think Vietnam government do very much for reconciliation inside Vietnam and outside Vietnam and the US and many countries. I think, of course, we need to do more, but they do, and for that last nearly 50 years, they do very much. And people do for that. When I was editor-in-chief of Vietnamnet, we do very much for that. And I think there are a lot of progress. There are a lot of progress in reconciliation in Vietnam, but we need to do more, of course. But that is the reason why I came here, and I work here with Tom, with many people, and I think so. That is today is the 100th year birthday of Vietnam Prime Minister Kiet. He inspired me and many young generation, many leaders in Vietnam, and I believe and trust today in Vietnam there are a lot of leaders and people respect and celebrate 100 years of Vietnam Prime Minister Kiet. And I really passionate admire his leadership, and I follow with him when I was a leader of Vietnamnet, and many colleagues, many my friends, and many leaders in Vietnam today do very much. That means show Vietnam government, Vietnamese leaders like with and follow with strategy, vision, and mission of Prime Minister Kiet very much. And now we can see a short clip to show Vietnam Prime Minister Võ Văn Kiệt. He is a symbol, and he is on behalf of leader of Vietnam, not only Võ Văn Kiệt, but also I think many leaders of Vietnam think about that and do about that, and he is a symbol, symbolic. Yeah, thank you.
Tại 6 để có cái chịu nghe, có cái dám làm, có cái phá rào, có cái hết lòng vì dân vì nước. Có lẽ anh Sáu chả có cái mục đích gì hơn là sống vì dân vì nước. Và muốn làm cái gì nó luôn luôn là phải làm được. Cái đó là một cái sự thôi thúc kinh khủng đối với anh Sáu. Nhưng nó có một cái tôi cứ hỏi mãi, tôi cứ tự suy nghĩ mãi, nhưng mà cái gì nó làm cho ông Sáu ông lại nắm được vấn đề, ông hiểu được vấn đề mà ông lại tìm cái cách ông cứ đi được. Thì người ta cứ nói nhiều đến là nhờ nghe trí thức, nhờ nghe cố vấn, rồi nhờ cái đó đúng, không có gì sai cả, nhưng nó mới chỉ là một mặt của vấn đề. Nhưng mà cái chính là gì? Theo tôi nghĩ, có thể tôi đúng mà có thể tôi sai. Cái chính là anh Sáu thực sự là muốn thế nhiều, tức là hiểu với tư cách là cái người hiểu những các cái nội lòng, những vấn đề của nhau. Cái đó nó quan trọng.
Ông Sáu cũng ủng hộ tất cả những nhà trí thức nào mà có góp phần vào xây dựng lại đất nước. Tôi cho cái quan điểm đó là rất đúng. Mà chính ông Sáu thì không phải là chỉ có đối với trí thức không, mà đối với toàn diện dân chúng của Việt Nam, ông có một quan tâm rất đặc biệt, rất là mạnh dạn ủng hộ, tới cái mức mà ông còn đi đón những người đi học tập cải tạo về, và đồng thời có một số người trốn bỏ đi. Khi mà họ bị bắt thì ông còn đi, ông ấy nhận đem họ về nữa, vì họ là những người trí thức của đất nước. Có những cái sai lầm, nhưng không phải là cái sai lầm chỉ là quyết định. Có thể những cái cách nhìn của ông Sáu đối với người dân, trong đó có trí thức, là một cách rất là đặc biệt.
Sáu dân thường xuyên là sống cùng dân, sống trong dân, tắm mình vào dân. Và khi tắm mình vào dân như thế đấy, tức là tắm mình vào ngọn nguồn của tươi trẻ và sáng suốt. Người bên phương Tây người ta có cả một câu nói về cái việc đấy, nhưng người ta thỉnh thoảng tắm mình vào dân bằng những cuộc đi thực tế. Sáu dân thì có thể nói là thường xuyên anh ấy tắm mình trong dân. Và khi gặp khó khăn, thời chiến cũng như thời bình, thì anh Sáu dân luôn luôn đi đến những nơi mà ở đấy vấn đề đang diễn ra gay gắt nhất, nguy cấp nhất, khẩn trương nhất, và đến cái chỗ ấy để xem dân đang làm gì, đang mong muốn gì, đang hoạt động như thế nào, và từ đó mà tìm ra được giải pháp.
Nếu mà không phải ông Sáu thì không ai dám chấp nhận cái này. Tuy nhiên tôi hiểu là ông Sáu là một người đã cố tìm từ xưa đến nay một cái mô hình nào đó để mà phát triển đất nước, để mà làm sao cho cái nhịp độ sinh trưởng của đất nước cao hơn. Thì Sáu có một cách nhìn không chịu, không cam chịu, phá vỡ đẩy đi lên, có lợi cho đất nước, có lợi cho dân tộc.
Sáu dân là một trong những người sớm thấy rằng chúng ta phải là một người bạn tin cậy của tất cả các quốc gia, bất kỳ thuộc chế độ chính trị xã hội nào trên thế giới này. Sớm nhận được cái điều đó, sớm nhận được cái điều đó, theo tôi quay trở lại cái tính chất dân và thực tế cuộc sống của sáu dân, nó ở đấy nhiều hơn là ở cái sự từng trải lão luyện ở trong cái hoạt động ngoại giao. Bắt đầu khởi đầu là ở cái chỗ ấy. từ ở trong thực tế cuộc sống ở trong nước và dân thấy rằng cần phải có cái gì, mà hiểu được rằng phải bình thường hóa quan hệ, phải có những quan hệ tin cậy lẫn nhau đến cái mức nào đó trong ngoại giao, bởi vì trong ngoại giao không có cái tin cậy tuyệt đối đâu, và phải mở ra những các cái mối quan hệ đối tác với lại rất nhiều nước trong khu vực và trên thế giới. Rồi dần cái bản lĩnh nâng lên thì không phải là một cách nó rất là bản năng từ ở trong cái thực tế cuộc sống và từ cái chất dân của mình ấy, mà là từ cái bản lĩnh chính trị của người lãnh đạo. Thì sau dân càng thấy như thế và càng thúc đẩy. Vì lẽ đó cho nên là về cái lĩnh vực ấy, ví dụ như là gia nhập vào ASEAN, gia nhập vào tổ chức thương mại thế giới, rút quân hết đi khỏi Campuchia và mở ra một cái thế mới, Việt Nam từ cái chỗ là muốn đến chỗ sẵn sàng, đến chỗ thực tế như hiện nay là bạn và đối tác tin cậy của mọi nước trong cộng đồng quốc tế vì hòa bình, hợp tác và phát triển. Sau dân có công lớn.
So the Boston Global Forum has a formal written tribute to the leadership of Prime Minister Abe. Given that you've just seen the video, I'm not going to read the full statement, but I would like to pull out a couple of things from it that kind of resonated with me and touch on the points made in the video. So he fought against both the French and the Americans, probably down on the Delta. I was stationed there myself as a member of the U.S. Special Forces. I remember that year very well. He lost his wife and 2 children to the South Vietnamese army, and in that sense was sort of an unlikely candidate for reconciliation. But it marked his work from the beginning. So after the war, he was appointed Communist Party chief in Saigon. The official policy at that point was that the South Vietnamese were not welcome as part of the government or part of the reconstruction, but he quietly brought them into his efforts to revitalize Saigon. And then he rose through the ranks, becoming prime minister in 1991. He said, being proud of the past does not mean that we cling to it like a cloak to cover our present shortcomings. And from that mindset, he championed Vietnam's opening to the world. The economy had opened up earlier, but he pushed very hard for further reopening of the Vietnamese economy, and of course, normalization in the diplomatic relationship with the U.S. When President Clinton was in office. And he advocated reconciliation not only between nations, but within Vietnam. He was a very strong advocate for bringing the South and North Vietnamese together as one people, but also the overseas Vietnamese. And Nam Pham had talked earlier about the estrangement that many Vietnamese felt at the end of the war. You saw the way that the name that they gave him, Sao Dan. That's not his name, but it means the prime minister in the hearts of the people. That gives you a sense of how they felt about him, a different kind of leader, someone who was truly a man of the people. And we're honored to be able to recognize him on his 100th birthday, and to hold him up as an example of the kind of leader that the world desperately needs today, but that Vietnam so much needed when he became Prime Minister in the 1990s. We're going to follow through, kind of thinking about his contributions. It's my pleasure to introduce Ramu. Ramu, I think you're going to be up next. Ramu has really worked well and so much for us. Ramu Damodaran, who is the former chief of and the first chief of the UN's Academic Impact Program. Ramu, thank you for your many contributions to the Boston Global Forum over the last couple of years. So, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you, Boston Global Forum, for that very eloquent tribute to Prime Minister Kiet. And I'd like to echo what you said, Tom, and ask us for a moment to imagine leaving home one morning, saying goodbye to your spouse and children, and hearing later that day that they had been killed in bomb raid, and to know their bodies would never be recovered. Most of us would have allowed that destruction of our lives to imbue us with a sense of hate, of revenge, of anger. Who amongst us would reach out to those whom we considered our enemies and work with them to create reconciliation, to restore trust, to nurture friendship? And yet, as Tom told us, one man did, and his name was Kiet. As Prime Minister of Vietnam from 1991 to 1997, he reciprocated the decision of the Clinton administration of the United States to lift embargoes against Vietnam in 1994, and the normalization of diplomatic relations the following year. As the Foreign Minister of Vietnam told the United Nations that very year, the lifting by the United States upon the embargoes imposed upon Vietnam has opened up new prospects for building and broadening multifaceted cooperation between our two countries and peoples in the service of peace, stability, cooperation, and development in the region and throughout the world. Words which I like to think are emblematic of what the Boston Global Forum itself is trying to do. And that was also an affirmation of what Prime Minister Kiet said at the ASEAN Summit. Gone are the dark days for the Southeast Asian region. In always looking to the future rather than regretting or reliving to the past, he brought to life 5 principles that informed his national and world view, which, in my mind, are important and which I'd like to share with you. 1, that unity in diversity was the driving force to attain national, regional, and global aspirations, as you said, Tom. He gave voice to this in Vietnam itself when he spoke for the need to respect those in his own country who had supported invading forces during the war, so that full national reconciliation could take place. He gave voice to this in ASEAN, where he spoke of uniformity, not a uniformity of identity, but uniformity of respect by each nation of the independence and sovereignty of other nations. And he gave voice to this globally when he established a consultative group on reform for Vietnam, which included scholars originally from Vietnam, but who were working at the United Nations, in Germany, in Japan, in the United States, among others. After he met the then Japanese Prime Minister Kiichi Miyazawa in Tokyo in 1992, Japan resumed its overseas development assistance to Vietnam in November 92 with a $370 million grant and indicated willingness to help repay Vietnam's debt to the International Monetary Fund. And then in October next year, it announced Japan that it would send legal experts to Vietnam to help draft new commercial and investment laws. Kiet was a champion of inner-party democracy, and he saw this as a prerequisite for drawing wisdom from the people, a subsidy, as he said, that could propel the country forward, and his assertion that democracy needed to be promoted within the party to ensure freedom of thought. The second element was the seeking of unconventional means of communication and dialogue. He was an accessible and respectful leader listening in particular to members of the creative community. His former assistant, Bu Chok Twan, has recalled how poet Nguyen Doi once read to him a poem which had criticisms of the government functioning. But Abe and Kiet appreciated them and took those criticisms on board. Or take the case of Dong Thap Muar, the province where rice was annually cultivated in just one crop, and the yield was only 1 ton for each harvest. The Prime Minister went directly to talk to the farmers, to communicate with them, wading through the mud to ask what could be done to improve production, and realized what was needed was a breakthrough in the irrigation system. As a result, paddy production in the Mekong Delta rose from 4.6 million tons in 1976 to 16.7 in 2000, and the Mekong River became the largest granary in Vietnam. Third, what Governor Michael Dukakis has called an open door policy to integrate with the world, in parallel with national reconciliation at home. Too many nations have sought to reach out to the outside world for reasons of politics or commerce, while ignoring the need for cohesion and unity as home. As Secretary Cameron Kerry just said, to reconcile national security with national development is not easy, but this was the mission he made his own. His Vietnam brought together the North and the South, as assuredly as he reached out to the East and the West. Symbolic of this was the 5,000 or 500 kilowatt North-South transmission line, which contributed to regulating the power volume throughout Vietnam, and as important, symbolizing the true reunification of the country. This was done through what he called the guerrilla method, dividing the span into several sections, setting the poles simultaneously, and then assembling the sections together. It was expected to take 4 years to build. It was done in 2. It was also an affirmation of the power of the young in Vietnam, Thuan's generation. Young people were the main force in the construction of electric poles, pulling wires. Many sections were the side of the Ho Chi Minh Communist Youth Union or the Da Nang Youth Volunteers Association. Bu Chok Twan recalls the days when he and the Prime Minister of Vietnam climbed to the high mountain peaks to look at the construction of electric poles. The young people gathered around Uncle Sao like a family member. And during a visit to the people constructing the line on the occasion of Lunar New Year, he talked with every person, asking about their family, about their food, about drinking water, and reminding them of the cakes that they must have during the Tet holiday, and they cheered. 4, the invigorating of the ethic of doi moi, or renovation, with a truly entrepreneurial spirit which allowed the private sector to realize its ambitions and the public sector to seek unexplored areas of adventure. Again, to quote the Vietnam Prime Minister, the core of this reform and renewal was a multi-sector economy. The average annual growth rate of the national product of the 3 years from 1991 to 93 was 7.3% for the first 6 months of 93, and that rate grew to 8%. In a sense, when you look at these figures, it reminds me of what Francesco referred to yesterday as DRAW, digital rights and wrongs. How you can, through digits, through figures, through the obscurity otherwise of symbols, realize what is right and what needs to be done, and what is wrong and what must be averted. And this is where the Prime Minister showed his greatest strength, drawing from statistics, drawing from the digits, the lessons that must be learned. In parallel, he had an inclusive policy to the skills of the young. He had a wonderful statement: no one can choose their parents, but you can choose your future. After the 30th of April 1975, when the South was liberated, he was made the chairman of the People's Committee in Ho Chi Minh City, the former Saigon. The state could not buy paddy. The people had to eat rice mixed with maize, potato, cassava. And then he revolutionized it. He chose state-owned enterprises to borrow foreign currencies, to fence break, as he put it, to sell produce at reasonable prices. For farmers, he removed the purchase of agricultural products at low set prices and created negotiated rates. As he once said, young people say, if you are human, I will die for the country. But, he went on to add, you don't need to die. What we need is for you to live and live meaningfully. So you should correct that sentence for, if I'm a human, I have to live for the homeland. Living is not parasitic. Living is to work. 5, the courage of public expression. As Prime Minister, he spoke openly about matters that were traditionally discussed in hushed tones privately. He took his nation and his people into confidence, and he gave a measure of himself to the world. An instance of this is a letter that he wrote on August 9, 1995, in anticipation of the 8th National Party Congress, and spoke of the importance to understand for Vietnam, to understand and be integrated into the world in which it lived. His concern about the breakdown of social order and security, of improving state management capacity, and of party reform. In an article earlier this week, Tom Patterson quoted Walter Lippmann as saying that the press intensifies rather than brings order to political chaos. And I would like to adapt that phrase to say this is what Vo Van Kiet did in Vietnam. He used his power of speech and of writing to bring order into the tumult of what was happening in that country at a very difficult time, immediately after the liberation and its emergence into power. Speaking here in Boston, I'm reminded of another anniversary yesterday, the assassination of President Kennedy. And I would like to share with you a thought that then Senator John Kennedy expressed in Washington in 1956 at a conference on America's state in Vietnam. And he said, it is due in part, our role in Vietnam, to the traditional role of American journalism, including readers as well as writers, to be more interested in crises than in accomplishments, to give more space to the threat of war than the need for work, and to write larger headlines on the sensational omissions of the past than the missions of the future. And he went on to say, our neglect of Vietnam is a result of the most serious weaknesses that has hampered the long-range effectiveness of American foreign policy over the last few years. In an oversimplification, as he said, our perception that we are a volunteer fire department for the world. Whenever and wherever fire breaks out, in Indochina, the Middle East, in Guatemala, and Cyprus, or the Taiwan Straits, our firemen rush in, wheeling up all their heavy equipment and resorting to every known method of containing and extinguishing the flames. The crowd gathers. The usually successful efforts by able volunteers are heartily applauded, and then the firemen rush off to the next conflagration, leaving the grateful but still stunned inhabitants to clean up the rubble, pick up the pieces, and rebuild their homes with whatever resources are available. John Kennedy, 1956. In many ways emblematic of John Kerry, who won a Purple Heart in Vietnam and has transformed that Purple Heart into a living, beating mechanism for the wars which today truly need to be fought. The wars against climate change, the war to defend the environment, the war for a more secure world. I would like to end with what to my mind is one of the most emblematic pictures of the reconciliation that was brought. Last March 1991, the United States was president of the United Nations Security Council. On the 31st of March, it handed over the presidency to the next country in alphabetical order in the council, Vietnam. And that sign of the ambassador of the United States handing the gavel to the ambassador of Vietnam showed, I think, what we here in the Boston Global Forum have tried, and I dare say succeeded, so avidly in doing, that distances are only measured in the mind. If we reach out, and we have so many means of doing so, through AI, through digital governance, and all that this forum and each one of you wonderful people symbolize, then we can do that together. And when I think of the fact that Prime Minister Vo Van Kiet took office at exactly the same moment that a nation created by the United Nations attained selfhood, the nation of Namibia, where Mats Carlsen's father was the first honorary citizen from Sweden, and the tributes paid in a newspaper called the Namibian to Vo Van Kiet when he died. Think of that, a newspaper in Southwest Africa investing its front page in a leader in East Asia, because that was the man we remember today, a man who united minds, who united people, but most important, united hearts. Thank you.
Bravo, thank you. Thank you very much for those wonderful remarks. The little personal story about kind of people coming together. Tuan and I live about a half a kilometer apart in Boston. And one of the kind of the great ironies that Special Forces camp that I was at in the latter part of my tour was a half a kilometer from Tuan's family house. And after the war, they dug up our compound, of course, and turned it into agricultural land. And Tuan would go there after school and plant vegetables. And there was a real food shortage in Vietnam at the time. So at least that camp turned out to provide some benefit to the Vietnamese people. So Ramo, thank you so much. Terrific remarks. Another good friend of the Boston Global Forum is up next. Zlatko, you heard from Zlatko Ljubića yesterday. He's the former Prime Minister of Bosnia Herzegovina. Zlatko, are you?
Well, I do see you. I do hear you, Houston. I don't have a problem in here. Do you have a problem there in Boston?
We can see you.
Hearing me?
And hear you.
Excellent. So thank you so much. It was really honor and privilege. I mean, for yesterday to be part of this gathering. And I think it's a great blend that we spoke yesterday about the future. We talked about manifesto of our AIWS, about actions to create age of global enlightenment. And I think today it's a great opportunity to remind ourselves about great people whose legacy is very good lighthouse for our future. Sometimes I'm thinking, I was listening to my dear friends about Shinzo Abe's legacy, and now when after this introduction by Peter, given by basically speaking by movie that Tuan gave us to, of course, and Thomas, I mean, your introduction about Boban Kiet, especially the words that I mean, it's hard to speak after Ramu. And next time, Tuan, when you put me in a program, please don't put me up to Ramu, because it's hard, you know, it's hard to play a ball after Messi if you see the Messi. So you don't go every day. Everyone is not Saudi Arabia to just kick out Argentina. So sometimes we have to be careful about how you are structuring it. But anyway, let me go to the few points that I wanted to share with you, especially in context of reconciliation, because I'm coming from the part of the world where the word reconciliation is a very important one. And I think that I'll just say a few facts that I learned about you know, Boban Kiet. But I will give you a few lessons that I learned from the legacy that I think may be relevant for the future, especially if we want to really enter into age which we call enlightenment age. I have found out, I mean, that Bo was really leading the Vietnam economic reforms, and we know that from 90s, and it was reopening to outside world after decades of isolation. That's something which itself is a great issue. He was a well-regarded Vietnamese revolutionary and political leader, a revolutionary veteran fighting in the long war against the French colonialism, and then South Vietnamese and American forces in South Vietnam during the Vietnam War. We know about him as someone who is in difficult years following the war, was one of the most prominent political leaders that led the innovation policy in Vietnam, Joy Moi. I hope I didn't pronounce that bad, so you know what I'm talking about. Innovation and reforms. I mean, can you imagine that at that time, someone was coming from hardcore communist country, was leading the country to join ASEAN and, you know, normalize relations with the US just 20 years after that war. So I think that you know, when we talk about his economy and about what he did in economic sense, we have to understand that he tried to change not some old-fashioned system, but he tried to change harsh Stalinist politics efficiency that was tried to show it is possible by central government. In that ideological context, in that post-war situation, where Stalin was still alive, 30 years after his death in Vietnam, I mean, we had the reformers who was really trying to crash that model and open the world. Can you imagine that we have people like him today and people like Abe and his Abenomics? If we could combine those people with Vint Cerf, people-centered economy, what we heard yesterday from Sandy Peterson. I mean, can you imagine that we have leaders who are really running the countries and are able and capable of reforming the real world in toughest situations? So I think that, when you say that he brought in foreign investment law, what is foreign investment law from today's perspective? But when he put it in that context, it was like heresy. It was like Martin Luther King, doing the reforms in that time. And not Martin Luther King, but even Martin Luther back in medieval Europe when he was reforming the church at that time. So I think just to talk when we put him in that context, I think it is something which deserves extraordinary award. So let me put it this way: about 30 years ago, less than 30 years ago, when the Dayton Peace Accord was brought, I was not happy about the way the peace was brought in. A lot of injustice was brought with it. Some complicated system was established to us, and so on and so. But then I was comforting myself. I was saying, well, wait a second, we got peace after the bloody war, 3 years of war, where more than 100,000 people were killed, where ultimately International Court for Former Yugoslavia brought to justice the verdict that it was a genocide in one part of the Bosnia and Herzegovina. I mean, after that war, we got peace. But then I was comforting myself, saying to myself, because a lot of injustice that was there as a result of the war, a lot of destruction, was quote, comforting myself by reminding myself of one old saying, peace is not everything, but without peace, nothing is possible. I think that the next step after the peace is economy, because economy is not everything, but without efficient economy, no progress is possible. And ultimately, we come to the word reconciliation. Reconciliation is not everything, but without reconciliation that is based on truth, justice, tolerance, and understanding, there is no progress in any country. And I think that what we are witnessing today, and what we're talking about when we're talking about Boban Kiet, I think he's one of the persons that should be a little bit more shown to the rest of the world, in today's world, in today's divided world. I think history does not recall so many persons who were so great, by not forgetting, but what was pain and injustice done to them. But he was forgiving that even to the guilty ones, especially to the people on whose behalf atrocities and human suffering was made. So I think his forgiveness, not forgetting it, is something which is basic condition for everything moving forward. I think the world should know much more about Boban Kiet, and not only because what he did for Vietnam people, what he did for reconciliation in their country and with the countries that he was the supporting actually the war in which he took away from his family, his wife and 2 children that been killed, as it was already mentioned. But we should learn and try to understand people like Mandela and Boban Kiet. I'm putting them in the same context because in today's changing, confronted, and divisive world, I think we have to constantly and growing struggle in between 2 different worlds to tackle with the legacy of people like we are talking about today, like not only Mandela and people like that, but about people like Boban Kiet, because he came from the country in which he was having maybe a tougher job than Mandela did. And today's world, which is divided in between 2 worlds, a world of cooperation and confrontation, world of reconciliation and world of revenge. a world of inclusive and exclusive societies, world in between shared and segregated societies, world in between respect and world of radicalism, world of tolerance and dialogue versus the world of supremacy and fear, and world of learning and understanding versus world of ignorance and selfishness. I think the legacy of people that we are talking about today, of course, people like Kiet was, it is very important for all of us. So I think one of his most quoted saying, the motherland come to us, the nation belongs to us, the Vietnam belongs to us, not to communists or any religion, group, or faction, I think is needed today more than ever in today's world. Because I think a lot of nations today need it. My nation, my country, we need that word. Not for Vietnam, but for my country. Just replace the word Bosnia and Herzegovina with Vietnam. That's what we need. Replace the word United States with the word Vietnam. You don't have a problem with communists. I mean, but if you say that the nation belongs to us, the state belongs to us, United States belongs to us, not to any party or any religious faction, it is really very important for it. It is important for my country. My country does not belong to any parties or any ruling or opposition party or any religious group or any factions. We have to go in that direction. But I think, and I will close with it, I will call our attention to one of the most highlighting quotes that is pointing out in the core preconditions for understanding pathways for recreation. I quote, when mentioning war, million people feel happy, but another million feel miserable. You replace with Vietnam, you can say for my country. Million, when you're mentioning our Bosnian war, or like he was mentioning Vietnam war, million people feel happy, another million feels miserable. So we have to understand that all of us today in confronted, divided nations, states, world, have to have in mind that ordinary people on winning or losing side are usually, seeing things differently, regardless of the fact that all of them are ultimately bigger or smaller losers, even if they are on the winning side. So I think that feeling of guilt and pride, victory and defeat, have to be filtered through reconciliation, which is based on truth and justice, dialogue and respect, learning and understanding. In Vietnam, in divided or united societies, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in European Union. Today in the European Union, we have to understand this belongs to all of us. And I think it is one of the most important lessons that I learned from studying about legacy of great Boban Kiet. And so, Tuan, Governor Thomas, I want to thank you for giving me privilege and opportunities to speak about such a great man who, forgive me for my ignorance, I didn't know so much when I was preparing myself for it. I found enormous wealth, enormous spring, lighthouse, a lot of things that this world needs. It's a great thing we were talking about us. We were talking about the future yesterday, because today talking about past, we're actually talking about things we have to remind ourselves, to create a better future. Thank you very much, and I really do want to thank you all for these 2 days of great discussions and great people who I was having privilege to listen. So good luck, and let's do something that, based on so smart people like Abe and Boban Kiet, we are really able to remake the world towards an age of global enlightenment. More people like them closer to our world. Thank you.
Zlatko, thank you. And thank you again for your many contributions to the Boston Global Forum. What you speak of in the Balkans is sadly quite true right now in the United States as well. We're a very deeply divided country, and this idea that the country belongs to no faction, I think, is a very powerful idea, particularly at a time when at least one side in our conflict would like to co-opt the country as belonging to them, or at least their definition of the country belonging to them. Our last formal presentation of the two-day conference will be from Matt Carlson, former Vice President of the World Bank. I think your father was mentioned earlier, or your grandfather. Is there a story? Is there a story? There's got to be a story to that too. So, Matt, please.
Just take this. Well, we are at the very end of a long morning. Well, I'm home, I think. Don't worry. I'm home. So that's fine. There is, after this morning, a very strong energy, I think, because we are deeply engaged in what we are doing. If we are an immigrant country like the United States is, and some of us aren't or are becoming, we need to be aware that there is a risk of a war of small differences. We could be, on the other hand, visionarily, a place of large commons. Slatko, who has suffered this in his country, Slatko, are you? Yes, I can see you. You're there, has suffered this in the most extreme way, and we need to change it. And whatever it is that Shinzo Abe and Kiet did, we need to read it in this context of coming beyond the conflicts of small differences. I think I want to just take 1 second to thank the Boston Global Forum, Michael Dukakis and his wife, and wish them very well. The privilege of being at Harvard and of being with you, with the diversity of you who are here. I came to the United States when I was 10. That was in 1967. So Vietnam was all over me in my childhood. And it became a way of thinking of the world, how to seek answers. And we need to seek answers that are drawn from that in this world of hyper complexity. I spent then my youth in the US in 1967. I later learned of Olof Palme, who was a persona non grata, maybe some of you know, to Kissinger and many who have built these institutions. Sweden is today inside NATO. In that respect, Vietnam actually changed my country. So changes don't come from wherever. Well, actually, yes, they come from places which you have not expected. And with Slatko, we wrote 3 books together through seminar inspirations. Bosnia and Sweden are now more closely connected than maybe Massachusetts and Arizona. you have to think about this. Maybe a bit of a random reflection, but I want to offer it. What changed for Vietnam? Many things. Some shifts, obviously, for peace and economic development, including for small enterprises, which we now call value chains. Vietnam conquered them, created a space. Let please now Vietnam conquer its confidence to be not only an economic and a diplomatic force, reconciliance to all of what we have spoken about, but also be one of the democracies of Asia. It is safe. I would also wish for you to remember three things after my comments. I won't actually expound on them, but prefer future reflections on them. One, do not underestimate the European Union as a force for peace and security far beyond Europe itself. I only recognize one European in this room, except Zlatko, but please, you need to realize it is a force that should not be underestimated. Secondly, be aware of the risk of trickling up of corruption to the highest grand levels. This is maybe the biggest force to achieve peace. Three, look for a social contract in which people can feel free and, as was said, and no fear. We just heard testimony to the idea of how fear disrupts. Why did Roosevelt speak about freedom from fear? For that exact reason. Rebuild. No false open doors. Governor Michael Dukakis asked for it, but there are traps in all of this, and we need to be conscious of them. I thought of that when someone said that Japan and Germany are playing. Well, they're Article 59 countries. Do you know what Article 59 is in the UN Charter? They are still enemies. That needs charter reform. I'm glad that the World Cup can make light of this, but it's not funny if you think about the whole history and who does harm to whom. I would like also to give a word in honor of Asian experience. It isn't my specialty. I'm an economist, political economist, institutionalist. But history is something you need to take in. It can be a source for good. It can be a poisoned well for bad. It is in our present, of course, but Asia is possibly the most important continent that is changing the logic of global governance. But don't forget Africa. Africa will be twice the size of the population of China and India if I live to statistically predicted age. To Vietnam, I would like to say once again that in the winter of 1973, this is a civil society appeal. I went from house to house in minus 15 degrees to collect signatures to protest against the Nixon bombings. To Japan, I want to say that I went at the 40 years celebrate, no, that's the wrong word, at the 40 years commemoration of the bombing and wrote my Prime Minister's speech to that event. What did we do? We actually dealt with nuclear weapons, the comprehensive test ban treaty, IAEA was strong. It's possible for the multilateral world to do things. It's really possible. So my life is what I'm trying to tell you, was formed by lots of possibilities. And now I am at a point where I feel that they are pouring through my fingers. And this is not okay. I will end, but just keep in mind that number one, the Ukraine war is a war of attack and choice and breaks every article of the United Nations Charter. We have heard very interestingly about Taiwan. Some of us who are engaged very much with the Middle East think about Saudi Arabia and Iran. We think about the Horn of Africa. I can't, combine all of this in a short event, but the geostrategic logic of this is that we need to stick to rules. That is what we already have accomplished. And there are people in the security policy environment who say, oh, we need something new. Yeah, we always need to adapt to the new, but we do not need to throw out what was good in the past. We need to hold on to it. That is the most important thing. I'm extremely grateful for the US support to Ukraine, for the UK's support to Ukraine. I'm sad of UK leaving Brexit, but the European Union is the country, is the environment that can keep Ukraine within an economic and social framework that will allow it to live eventually. That is the first point of what I tried to tell you about what the solution of the peace would look like. So on the one hand, you have the extremes who say that we are slipping into World War III, but we could also equally well slip into a very nice union of countries who stick to the same economic and social ways of life. That's the security thing. Now, I'll 2 and 3, and then I'll just end. We had yesterday a long conversation about AI and the governance of it. Many of us have struggled about this for a very long time. Who can do it? Who has the right to do it? Who would make it happen? The thing with it is use normal anti-corruption laws, anti-monopoly laws. We don't need to reinvent so much. No one is allowed to own as much as Elon Musk is claiming to own. Why should I be subject to Elon Musk's ideas of Trump? It's not okay. There was even an article yesterday about billionaires and their role in society. We choose what the role of political power is. So don't let grand corruption rise to take over political power. That is what we have seen for quite a long time. I just want to end with the third point of what we need to think about the future, Tuan. I'll end there. It's about the social contract. The social contract is extremely complex in all its character. It can look different in different countries. Mind you, a social contract can be very bad. Shut up and I'll give you wheat flour. But it can also be good. Don't fear, create. The youth can create something for themselves, for their families. For us who have, or for someone like me who has spent the whole professional life on creating good social contracts, it is extremely challenging and sad to see that the world is not going in that way. But we are going in the way of grand corruption. And I can't speak to an audience like this without challenging you to bring all your power to the side that brings strong social contracts. I'm in the United States now, back after many years of living here, but back after 3-4 years. And I saw the midterms, and I see an opportunity because all of us have to create a line, an arc of possibility for the future. And if the United States from local level can build a social contract that sticks to the Constitution, like the European Union Constitution is, like the United Nations Charter is, then we can hold on to law and order, which is our legacy, who have wanted to try to take something. I'm an economist and I want to speak about economy, but I've drifted into this space where we don't see our own blind spots. The blind spots are now evident. So let's just change the way we are doing things. Let's take the inspiration of the two people who have been talking about, Shinzo Abe and Kiet today. Let's take the inspiration of what is happening right now, but let's take it extremely seriously because we are on the tipping point.
Matt, thank you very much. I think the point about these examples of individuals like Kiet and Nelson Mandela and the like, and what kind of inspiration, lessons we can draw moving forward, very important. And I think that's been clear in your remarks, and the remarks of Ramu and Zlatko. So that ends the formal part of the conference, but we do have some minutes here. If someone would like to offer observations, questions of any of the speakers and the like, we do have some moment before if you were here yesterday, they kicked us out. We're not quite at that point yet today, but Low House does have rules about how long we can hang in. So we have some moments here. So doesn't have to be questions. It could be comments, observations. Please.
So
Let's get the mic here.
Good morning, our speaker and distinguished guests. First, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Thang, the lecturer from FPT University, School of Business, teaching in leadership, and assistant to BDF CEO. Second, I like to listen more deeply the evaluation from speaker and all about Mr. Shinzo Abe and some key factor, which is more impressive, like vision, influence, security and economy, and national and global. So that is the question for the Mr. Shinzo Abe. And about Mr. Kiet, Prime Minister of Vietnam, we would like to listen more about like how evaluation from all of you for the like what's the impressive with reformist or reconciliation means, or like what the leading organizational trends. So this is two things from podcast I want to listen from speaker and all of you. Thank you.
Responses, other comments? Some of you I know are probably waiting to get wheels up to hit the road for Thanksgiving. Traffic is going to be horrendous, but you'll survive. Please.
A lot has been said, very inspiring speeches, not speeches, I would say, very heartfelt, very inspirational words that have been shared with us. I would speak to what you mentioned last, organizational change or change. And I would very briefly say about change, as I put it, and I don't think I would recall the exact language, but change is hard because those who benefit from the status quo do not welcome it, and those who might benefit from change are unsure about what the future may bring under that new situation, change situation. So I think it's something we always have to keep reminding ourselves, not fear change because change is needed. We need to keep reinventing ourselves at any level of whoever we are. But also we keep reminding ourselves that it's going to be difficult, but it's important to get there, and we'll get there.
Yes, thank you so much. Because we're talking about Prime Minister Kiet is talking about the change. He changed so much from the we say about communism, right? And we're talking about capitalism, right? So it's how we change, because the system is there already, but now it's a new thing. We just after the war. So how we connect with the external the war, because it's last time it's different. We were not friends yet. We is enemy. So how we can second and can develop for the country. So I think that is very important. It's like not only internal country, but it's external the war. Because it's like we have different benefits, like you say, and in the organization, they might have some different thinking. So yeah.
And I may add in that context, in the context of the leadership shown by Prime Minister Kiet, we have seen examples of this was a war, but winners of revolution, heroes of revolution, becoming being corrupted by their own success. And their and we have seen that in Zimbabwe and in a number of other places. So I think the example of the leadership in Vietnam is exceptional. and the work that was done at reaching out to him. It's just, I did not know about it. I learned about it today, and it's just Ram said and others say, it's just it's a shining example of leadership, and having lost family and then in his hand to come to reconciliation. It's hard if we were to think of it as at a human level. Put ourselves in the shoes of the person. It's something extra.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And so again, this is the 10th anniversary of the Boston Global Forum, and we've been blessed with so many contributors over these 10 years. Some have helped us many times for many years, and we would like to recognize what we are calling distinguished contributors to Boston Global Forum, who've made a long-term investment in we go through them one by one. So we'll get our pictures. So Michael Dukakis, Tuan, me, Nazli Chukri, Sandy Bentley. Let's see, David Solberg, Ramu, thank you. Nobi, you saw earlier. Ichiro Fujisaki, Yoshida Nakayama, Zlatko, Byrovika Freiberga from Latvia, Koji Hamada, Bonjour. And let me say something about Tom here. This is someone you've not seen, but behind the scenes, we have very important people. And he is our most important person behind the scene, one of two. He does our electronics for us, so that keeps us running. And then this is my favorite college student, Ming. She's at Brandeis, and Ming is Tuan's daughter, and she edits that weekly newsletter that you get. And she's been doing that for quite a number of years. Does an extraordinary job with it. It's an extremely valuable contribution to the Boston Global Forum. Then Zanetta Ozolina, Paul Nemitz, and Dick.
Hello.
There you are, Dick. I can't. Dick, the line. Dick, the reason I paused is the light is shining directly from there, and I couldn't see whether you're still here.
I'm still here.
Yeah, thanks, Dick. So for some reason that one didn't pop up, but you are in our Hall of Fame too, Dick. So you'll get one of these certificates as well. So, but I want to thank all of the distinguished contributors, but there have been so many others, and this organization is going to last. We do have a 15th anniversary that will come up in 5 years. There will be additional names at that point, and that's what makes this organization so strong. Tuan is just fundamental to that. He's a networker. He keeps bringing new people in. The organization gets stronger and stronger. And I go back to the idea of Robert Kennedy and the ripples. We create ripples, but hopefully they contribute to those larger waves that can bring about change. So I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving on behalf of the Boston Global Forum, but I don't have the last word. Mike Dukakis would like to, Mike would like to have that word, so he's going to speak to you in a second.
And thank you all. And I feel terrible about what happened. I mean, how do you pull a muscle walking a dog 10 minutes to a groomer? But maybe that's a warning sign of some. And unfortunately, the sound wasn't great, so I didn't hear a lot of what you had to say. So if there are prepared remarks that would duly some of you deliver, I would appreciate. The doctor tells me it takes 3 to 4 weeks to get over this whole muscle. And that's not good. But I hope before the next month I'll be back in my daily mind. And over this thing, it really is pretty silly about it. But age is in any event, my do, especially to Tuan, without whom we won't be here. Got a lot to do, folks, but I see a promising future, and we'll be very much a part of it. So thank you. Look forward to working with you in the future. I'll try very hard to avoid any more pulled muscle next time.
Thank you so much, Tanzania, Chair Boston Global Forum. Tanzania, Governor Michael Dukakis, Chair and co-founder of Boston Global Forum. We are from our heart, from Zitru to send you and Kitty with our warm heart, grateful for your leadership, special leadership.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, okay. And yes, and also with I would like to say some few words more with Nick Pirozolo. He is also, he is a former veteran in Vietnam War, and he great contribution for Vietnam to US relation normalization. And he is our dear friend. Yes, Nick can hear. He contributes very much in many years. Now he retired, and he continue to support for us, and we highly appreciate and thank you very much for your contribution. And we will send you plaque.
Oh, well, thank you. I know everybody wants to go, but it was great to hear about all the talk about reconciliation. It was something that I worked on with the very first welcoming of the U.S. to trade with Vietnam at the first trade show in Hanoi, and it just built from there. So anyway, it was good to get this review of how things went from 1975 to 1995 to now, where Vietnam and the U.S. are allies, friends, and trading partners. Anyway, that's all I know.
Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving. Yeah.